Welcome to another episode of The Metal Voice. I'm Al, the Metal Guy.
And I'm Jim, the other metal guy.
Every week we try to bring you new and exciting ways to talk about metal. Sometimes we succeed, sometimes we don't.
Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose.
This episode is about, we spoke about Black Sabbath and, some of the great bands from the 70s, Were they metal? Were they hard rock? I think they were hard rock at that point.
Who came out of that Black Sabbath era? Who followed, who looked up to Black Sabbath and started their own success in the metal world?
We had the pioneers like Deep Purple, Zeppelin, and Black Sabbath, and then we went into later years. But in the 70s, I would say some of the strongest ones were, I think, Thin Lizzy coming out of Europe. Not so big here in North America, but the great albums. One of the first ones I got it from them was actually Thunder and Lightning, released in the 80s. But if you go back, the Live and Dangerous album, Jailbreak, these are great albums. Another one for me would be Rush. Canada's own Rush. A little bit more prog influence. Started off earlier in their career sounding a lot like a Led Zeppelin. And then went to the Genesis and the Yes influences and segued all the way up.
But always had a hard rock edge to them. That was the difference between Rush and Genesis and Led Zeppelin.
And I mean, we're talking the 70s, Jim,
We're talking about high heels for guys.
And we're talking
platform shoes. Platform shoes. And we're talking about the Scorpions. We're not talking about the Scorpions Blackout here. We're talking about the Scorpions with the Uli John Roth period. I mean, we're talking
Virgin
about
Killer. We're talking Taken by Force.
This is the psychedelic hard rock sounds with the Jimi Hendrix influence in
Uli John Roth. Scorpions right there as well. Again, before they went to Mercury, signed with a big deal with Mercury, going a little bit more in the commercial hard rock aspect, starting with Love Drive. But again, some very, like you said, psychedelically influenced music because of Uli John Roth.
And then we had the offspring of Sabbath, which was Judas Priest. I mean, here's a band who just kept getting better and better every album, and even to this day when they release an album, sometimes I go, wow, this is a great piece of work. That's 35 years down the line.
Sad Wings of Destiny, Rockarola, and Unleashed in the East, which is a great live album. A Victim of Changes. A Joan Baez cover, which is Diamond and Rust. Another Fleetwood Mac cover. The Green Man Unleashed with the Two-Pronged Crown. Again, they were doing their own thing, had their own kind of sound, not quite hitting their stride just yet. And then, but this is all before they hit with the British Steel and kind of going, again, more commercial leanings to get them on the radio, get that airplay, and take their careers to that next level.
Screaming for Vengeance, You Got Another Thing Coming. After that, of course, one of my favorite albums was
Defenders of the Faith.
Defenders of the Faith. See, it slipped my mind. It was so great.
Being the 70s, Jim, one of the things that makes me laugh is, if you look at the time, you had Kiss. Blood-spitting demon. Rock and roll all night, a party every day, You had Rick Derringer out there with a rock and roll hoochie coo. All these types of songs, And then you had Rush. I could just see that record executive company. They come with their album saying, we just finished, here it is. And he goes, okay, what's this about? What are you singing about? Trees. Trees.
2112.
What's trees? Everybody else is partying and singing about sex and drugs. And what are you guys singing about? Well, being from Canada, we sing about trees. It's an allegory about the class struggles between maples and oaks.
There you have it. That's all you have.
That explains Rush in a nutshell.
And you know what? Probably one of my favorite bands is Rush. And they never went with the trends. They never went for commercial success. They did what they wanted to do. They wrote what they wanted to write, and they were successful at it.
Of course, another band, ACDC. Releasing some of their core albums at that point. Let There Be Rock, which is a classic album. Bon Scott at his best. Powerage, which that's the first album that turned the Rolling Stones onto them. I mean, that's taking rock and roll right back to its essence. Highway to Hell, again there. You can see where Mutt Lange came in, kind of rounded the sharp edges, a little bit more accessible to radio. And this is a tendency we're seeing with Priest, Scorpions, ACDC. Taking them to that next level meant they had to be more accessible to radio airplay. Meaning more people would be listening, have access to them, and just bring them to that next level.
One thing I do miss about the 70s is radio wasn't corporate. Right. There was a lot of privately owned radio stations at the time, which meant DJs would just put on anything they like. Of course, there was a lot of payolas at the same time too.
Right.
But you would hear the whole side of 2112 played on the radio, which you don't get today. Today you'll hear, you know, the same old standards on radio. If it's going to be, you know, not the trees, but closer to the heart, you'll hear the closer to the heart. But I'd like to hear all of 2112 or all of Hemispheres, or you know what, even Caress the Steel. Why not play the whole album?
One of my favorite stories from Rush, Jim, is the time UFO opened for them. And at Rush, you know, at the time, they couldn't just come out like they wanted in jeans and a t-shirt. You were part of the Allman Brothers band if you did something like that. So they had these flowing robes. They went over to Japan or China, and they came back with these kind of geisha robes. And I remember UFO...
Like they just got out of the shower.
They look over at the side of the stage one night, and here's all the guys with UFOs with these old granny robes on and these big bunny slippers, taking the piss out of them, as they say, because of the way they were dressed and being on stage with all these flowing robes. They decided to tease them a little bit about that. Every week we get thousands and thousands of emails and letters. Truckloads.
I can't even keep up. I'm just there all the time.
We get emails, letters, postcards, posters. And one of the questions that comes from Christopher this week is, for you, which band best sums up the 70s hard rock or metal scene?
To me, I think it would be Rush. Rush started off as a sort of Zeppelin-ish type band, then moved more, like we said before, more progressive, hard rock. Always the lyrics are extremely interesting.
Coming into the band, yeah.
Neil Peart coming into the band. The lyrics were phenomenal. That's what us metalheads like. We like good lyrics. Then you had the musicianship was next. Probably the best musicianship you could ever find. Drumming, bass playing, guitar playing, and there were only 3 of them.
For myself, it was actually a band, I bought their first album in the early 80s called Thunder and Lightning, and I revisited them throughout the years. I've gone back and got a lot of their earlier stuff to complete my collection, and for me it would be Thin Lizzy. Phil Lynott, just his persona, his voice, even on their weakest track, with that voice, it just brings it up a whole other notch. And makes it a great listening experience. So they had, you know, Jailbreak, of course, broke them worldwide.
Yeah.
They had some good songs before that, great albums, but that one broke them worldwide. And then again, bad luck, timing, getting sick, getting hepatitis while touring the U.S. Another band that opened for Rush, and they got along tremendously well together. And more of a following in Europe maybe than North America because of the timing difficulties and some of the things they experienced. But for myself, going right through to even Renegade and Chinatown albums, they're definitely worth a look out. And whatever he lived, he sang about, he wrote about. He had major drug problems, songs like It's Getting Dangerous, or Powder Blues, or Sugar Blues, I should say. These are all things that he was living, experiencing, and he put into songs. So for myself, it would be Thin Lizzy would definitely be a band to go back and check out.
Thanks for watching another edition of The Metal Voice. And if you want to send us an email or ask us to debate a certain topic, you can reach us at themetalvoice@gmail.com.
And don't forget to check out our website, www.themetalvoice.com. We'll have updates and some reviews coming soon. And check it out and keep tuning in.